I'm Joe Rapari, and this is Tab, the Truth Always Boomer. This is my first response video, and I'm taking on Alissa Quart and her new book, Squeezed, Why American Families Can't Afford America. So let's pull the tab on that and see what happens. Hello, ladies and gentlemen. This is my first response video, and it's in response to Alissa Quart's interview video regarding her new book, Squeezed, Why American Families Can't Afford America. So let's get started.
I am joined now by Alissa Quart via Skype. She's here to talk about her new book, Squeezed, Why Our Families Can't Afford America.
Well, I disagree with her premise right from the start, so let's continue.
So I'm loving the book. I think you have hit the nail on the head in terms of how American families across the country are feeling. And yet at the same time, we have all these great economic numbers. Unemployment is low. The stock market is high. Things are all better now under Trump's economy, right?
Well, that's the joke of it. I mean, we may be having higher employment levels than before, but wages are simply not keeping up and prices are skyrocketing.
You hit the nail right on the head about American families are feeling everything is great under Trump's economy, right? And Alissa says, well, that's the joke of it. We're having higher employment levels than before, but wages are not keeping up and prices are skyrocketing. Well, is that so? Sounds like liberal propaganda to me. Let's check it out. Ms. Quart says that wages are not keeping up, and that's the joke of it. Wages are not keeping up. Let's look at this article from the Wall Street Journal just from last week. And I quote, "The Bureau of Economic Analysis on Tuesday published its annual revisions to personal income data, and the surprise was the huge jump in disposable income and employee compensation. The revisions show that employee compensation rose 4.5% in 2017 and 5% in 2018, some $4.4 billion, and $87.1 billion more than previously reported. The trend has continued into 2019, and with compensation increasing $378 billion, or 3.4% in the first 6 months alone. Wages and salaries were revised upward to 5.3% from 3.6% in May year over year. And in June, wages and salaries grew at an annual rate of 5.5%, which is a rocking 4.1% after adjusting for inflation. So, Ms. Quart, that argument doesn't hold water, and I hope you didn't write a whole book on that. Anyway, that doesn't hold any water, as I said. Hey, let's look at prices now, shall we? Let's look at this graph of 20 years of price changes in the United States. So, she says that childcare, college, and I'm going to say hospital or medical insurance has gone up. And they have. But if you have hospital insurance and you don't look around for the best deal, whose fault is that? That's on you. There are some very good deals out there that you can get. College, well, that's an elective. So is childcare. That's an elective. If you can't afford college tuition and you can't afford childcare, those two options should not be in your equation. She'll drop those things right out of it. I don't know what she's talking about. If families have tuition and they have childcare and they can't afford it, whose fault is that? Don't be blaming that on America. It's not my fault. I'm an American. It ain't my fault. So you need to rethink your logic there, Ms. Quart. Now, let's check out some of the other prices, shall we, for other goods. Check it out. New cars, household furnishings, wireless telephone services, computer software, toys and television. Look at those prices. And prices are like stable or even have gone down in price. You can buy a friggin' printer for your computer for $50. Come on, and look where the hourly wage is. It's right here. It's above all these other things. So what is she talking about? Prices are skyrocketing. No, they're not. Prices are stable or going down. Now, like, yeah, college is more expensive, medical insurance is more expensive, and childcare is not cheap either. But take those out of the equation if you can't afford them. If you can't afford them, don't buy them. Look at all these other things. New cars, household furnishings, housing, food, and beverages. Look at this. They're all stable or going down. They're relatively cheap. And if you can't afford them, you're certainly not going to buy a new car if you can't afford it. You might buy a used car. You might maybe lease one or whatever you want to do. But you can't make the blanket statement, prices are skyrocketing. Not according to this chart, they're not. Not in the last 20 years. Look at all these normal household commodities that everyone has, and look at how the prices are stable or have gone way, way down. So that argument doesn't hold any water either. Prices are not skyrocketing. And if you don't shop around for the best price in healthcare, whose fault is that? Again, that's your fault. It's not my fault. It's not America's fault. If you go to college, you take out a gigantic student loan, and you can't pay it back, that's your fault. It's not America's fault. Don't take out the loan if you can't pay for it, for crying out loud.
And what I saw on the ground was people were working jobs that they didn't like, and they were barely seeing their children. So maybe they're working, but they're not working the optimal jobs for them, and they may be doing multiple jobs.
So what she saw on the ground were people working jobs they didn't like, barely seeing their kids, and sometimes working multiple jobs and not the optimal job for them. Well, whose fault is that? It's certainly not America's fault. Find a job you like, and if you need to get more training, go get it. Now, let me tell you what I see when I'm on the ground. I see highly qualified engineers, architects, technicians, tool makers, die makers, electricians, carpenters, plumbers, small business owners, assembly line workers, construction workers, all working hard and all making good livings. Yes, some work long hours. Most work long hours. But they're very happy to do it to support themselves and their families and to enjoy the fruits of their labors.
One of the things that really struck me about your book is the way you discuss the shame that people feel that they're not able to make it. And that really struck home for me. I was actually talking to an Uber driver who used to have this middle-class life, and then she lost her job, and now she was working for Uber, and she hadn't been able to keep her apartment, and she felt like it was her fault. And even though intellectually she knew it wasn't her fault, she couldn't help but feel ashamed that she was in this precarious position. Did you find that that was a common sentiment for folks?
Yeah, I found people were really blaming themselves, wondering what they did wrong. They may have, college degrees, graduate degrees, even multiple degrees, and somehow they were not. They had to do side hustles, and they didn't get to do what they wanted professionally, and they weren't making enough to pay for themselves or their children.
She says they feel ashamed. Again, whose fault is that? Sit your ass down, come up with a plan, research that plan, execute that plan, and better yourself. If you have multiple degrees and can't find a job, whose fault is that? It's not America's fault. Maybe it's time to switch your field. Nobody's going to feed you and your family. That's up to you. No one cares about whether you feel ashamed. No one cares about your feelings. Your feelings are not arguments, man. Get a plan, get a strategy. You're the one responsible for you and yours.
So what are the main expenses that have gone up that have made life so difficult for families?
The main expenses is housing, which is tripled or quadrupled in some cities. It's things like education that has public colleges have doubled since 1996, and private is even more. And things like daycare, which can eat up 30 to 40% of people's salaries.
She talks about the most expensive things. Well, let's put that chart up again, shall we? Well, I know liberals like you, Alissa, and your interviewer friend there don't like facts, but let's check them out anyways, shall we? Oh, again, this chart shows, look, average earnings outpacing housing prices. Hey, interest rates are pretty reasonable right now, and you can get some pretty good deals on a house. So I don't know what you're talking about. Maybe you need to lower your expectations and buy a little smaller house, maybe a starter home first, and then move your way up. But it looks like, wages are outpacing housing prices. And as I said before, look how these prices are stable or even have gone down in price. Pretty, reasonable to live with these kind of prices, I would say. So, let's look at this student loan debt facts, shall we? The median monthly student loan payment is around $222 a month. Now, whose monthly income is that straining? What kind of a job do you have that you can't afford that? Now, it's not my problem, or it's not America's problem if you went to a huge college or a fancy Ivy League college and you got $200,000 worth of debt and your payments through the roof. That's not America's fault. That's your fault. It's not my fault. And check this out. Look how much a community college education costs. $3,347. That sounds pretty reasonable to me. I don't know what you're talking about. It sounds like you're making some bad decisions, and the people you talk to make some bad decisions. I don't know what you're talking about. These prices seem pretty reasonable to me. I don't know what you're talking about. Check this out. Now, I know medical care is another huge expense, and you don't even bring that up, but I'm bringing it up. But I know for a fact that this company has plans as low as $302 a month, because I just talked to my agent about this. And $302 a month, that's pretty reasonable for medical care. So I don't know what you're talking about, as I keep saying. Don't know. I don't know who you're talking to or where you live or what part of the country you're from or what part of the country you're going to. But I don't know, man. Your arguments don't hold any water at all. And then check this out. You're talking about daycare? Well, check this out. Look here's 7 alternatives to traditional daycare. Babysitting cooperatives. Babysitting exchange. I trade babysitting hours with another mom. Look at this, shared babysitter. Consider sharing a babysitter. In-house daycare. Oh, the price is wonderful. Non-profit centers are perfect for backup daycare when schools are closed. Some community colleges have on-site childcare with drop-in program, school-sponsored childcare, close friends and relatives, circle of mom members. Speaking of relatives, check this out, Alissa. The grandparent economy, how baby boomers are boosting the next generation. Check this out. More than half of grandparents have provided financial assistance to their adult children, ranging from emergency help after a job loss to help with tuition or a down payment on a home. And look at this, nearly a third of grandparents watch their grandchildren 5 days a week or more. And more than 40% babysit in some capacity. So to make a blanket statement, oh, childcare costs are through the roof, you're not looking at all of the other possibilities here. So again, your arguments hold absolutely no water and are just a bunch of liberal talking points. America is bad, America sucks, can't do anything in America. You people need to get off your asses and stop bitching about stuff.
How are people managing? To me, the daycare thing is just unbelievable what it costs, and especially if you're working in a job that requires you to be in early hours or work late hours and have a schedule that's all over the map. How are people even making this work at all?
That's what I saw. I saw people having to really struggle. I mean, things like universal pre-K that exists in New York City now, it's gone up from 20,000 to 68,000 seats in 2 years. To me, that showed me this is what we need to make it work. But But then people are also doing things like barter and trade. I mean, just really medieval. They're living together as non-romantically, non-biologically related, but they take care of each other's kids. They pay for rent together. So we're sort of going back to these primeval forms because our nation is neglecting us.
No, no, no. Our nation is not neglecting us. Just the opposite. It's not primeval. People have been living with roommates and sharing expenses forever. All my kids and grandkids and most, if not all, the people in my state who have pre-kindergarten children send their kids to preschool. I don't know where you live or where you visited, but here it's pretty common to send your kids to preschool, and it's very reasonably priced. And this whole thing about bartering and trading, that's not common. Although, I do know a guy who just traded a guitar for a motorcycle carburetor. Yeah, it does happen.
How do you define middle class? What's your definition in the book?
Well, the working definition is 42,000 to 125,000 earning a year, but I think of it as an imaginary category as well, like something that people think they are. And it comes along with education and certain set of aspirations and certain kinds of managerial professional classes that we thought, oh, this is going to, these jobs are safe, like being a lawyer or being an accountant. And some of it's like a fantasy space for the American dream as well.
Now, she's mostly talking about families here. So if you have two people making between $42,000 and $125,000 a year, that's a family income between $84,000 and $250,000 per year. Those are pretty good middle class incomes, if you ask me. That pretty much destroys your argument right there. If you make between $84K and $250K and you can't live a comfortable middle class lifestyle, whose fault is that? That's your fault. That's not America's fault.
Yeah. Well, one group of people that I think we've always thought of as sort of quintessentially middle class were teachers. And we saw this year this massive movements of teachers in red states in particular across the country essentially saying, you aren't paying us enough to live without having a second job, without having to, do all kinds of crazy things to make ends meet. Did you find that as well in your reporting for the book?
Yeah, I did. I found people who were driving Uber and Lyft on the side, like your Uber driver. And I was finding people who were, painting houses in North Dakota, after the school bell rang, because oil prices had made housing go up in that area. So suddenly they were making $32,000 and that wasn't covering their rent. So yeah, I met teachers who were grading at stoplights.
Oh, yes. It's only in the red states where teachers say they don't make enough to live. Are you out of your frickin' mind, lady? That's nuts. Teachers just starting out with no experience, no postgraduate degree, no certification, they're going to make around $32,000 to $35,000 a year. I don't care what state you're in. Experienced teachers with advanced degrees, certifications, and tenure make a very, very good living. They don't drive Ubers and they don't grade papers at stoplights. No way and no how. I just talked to a whole school of teachers, and they laughed at me when I said that. Now, some teachers do enjoy getting part-time jobs in the summertime, because remember, teachers have the summers off. Some teachers enjoy being bartenders at a nice club, maybe tutoring students, maybe they're a lifeguard, or maybe they're a youth referee or a yoga instructor. In this state, dual income teachers make very, very good livings. And there are charter schools springing up all over. And these charter schools are offering very attractive salaries and benefits. So Alissa, I think you need to get out more.
Did they expect that that's what a life as a teacher would look like?
No, of course not. They thought they were doing something. They thought correctly that they were the backbone of this country, and that's the point of the book. I think that we need to support these jobs, this is what it means to be American, is to have these kind of, all these support jobs, the municipal jobs, the librarians, the teachers, they keep this country going. And that's what, these people aren't reaching for the stars. I say they are reaching for the ceiling. And we should make it possible for them to support us.
Yes, I do agree that teachers are the backbone of this country. They are the first adults that our kids usually come in contact with other than their parents. So yes, they are very important. I agree.
You look at traditional middle-class professions like teaching, adjunct professor, writer, where even, these sort of traditional bastions of middle-class success are also under attack. Did you find any hope that there might be a way to turn the economy so that workers can actually make it?
Well, yeah, I mean, I think that one of the things that we can do is we can start creating, these are things that we've talked about before, affordable apprenticeship programs, not these expensive certificates in for-profit colleges.
Where are these jobs under attack? Chapter and verse, please. Alissa, you don't even know what an apprenticeship is. When you enter an apprenticeship, it's usually sponsored by a company. The company pays for it. The company pays for your work, and your company pays for your schooling. It's sponsored to a company, so your work coincides with your education. You do the two things in conjunction with each other. Young people have been steered away from apprenticeships. It's somehow second class to go through an apprenticeship and work with your hands. It's not because apprenticeships are too expensive. It's because enrollment in apprenticeships have declined and companies have stopped offering them. Nobody wants to get into them. We need to get back into that. That's a very good thing. I went through an apprenticeship, a 9,000-hour apprenticeship. And I worked in the skilled trades for a while. Then I went back to college, got my engineering degree. It worked out great for me. You can still do that. And community college offers certificate programs, very reasonably priced, and you can get a good paying job with that certificate.
We can also start regulating the for-profit and the regular universities so that people are not left with college debt. So I think there's really straightforward things we can do. We can also start considering, as more people are considering, universal basic income, which is a little bit of money every month that makes lives like the ones that I wrote about more possible. And then finally, start voting differently. And I don't know how else to say this, but voting for people who support family-friendly policies. And we may have to do it on the local level because obviously there's such a block nationally.
Oh yeah, that's exactly what we need. We may need more regulations and more free stuff from the government, like free college and free universal income. Give me a break. We need people to make smart decisions for themselves. Start thinking critically and logically and taking responsibilities for their actions and not expecting other people to bail them out. We need people to take accountability. Like I said, not expect the government to bail them out. And I definitely agree with you, Alissa. We need people-friendly policies. Yeah, like the ones we have now. We need smaller government, lower taxes, less regulations, and people who take responsibility for themselves and their families. In stark contrast to all your doom and gloom, Alissa, I see a vibrant, thriving middle class, very happy people working very hard to support themselves and their family. I see a thriving middle class enjoying the fruits of their labor. I see people enjoying their summers barbecuing, swimming, boating, jet skiing, water skiing, mountain biking, hiking, camping, and fishing. I see grandparents throwing elaborate parties for their grandkids and having a grand old time with them. I see family reunions of every race and ethnicity. I see stores crowded with people spending their money on holidays, on summer holidays. I see crowds of people out to dinner on a balmy summer night. I see people cruising in their muscle cars. I see motorcycles lined up, one right after another, going to events. I see people at fruit markets all over, large and small. I see thousands of people at local art and parks. I see thousands and thousands of people at Major League Baseball games and soccer games. I see hundreds of people going to see the latest blockbuster movie. I see people vacationing all over this grand country that we call America. Alissa, your opinions are nothing more than doom and gloom liberal propaganda. And you know what? No, Alissa, I'm not going to read your book. That's it for now. Hope you enjoyed this video. More news later. Take care, and as always, be safe.